Too close for comfort won't be seen tonight, so we can bring you a very special episode of the Gen X Files. Welcome to the Gen X Files. I'm Jim.
I'm Adam.
And today we have another edition of For the Stepdads.
For the Stepdads. Today we're going to the movies.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, their early days, and a little bit about in my opinion, the absolute best periods of cinema from about 1966 to about 1978.
Okay.
We had a lot of really great films, a lot of
really good films, yeah.
Also a lot of stars that came out that we probably wouldn't have seen before or since.
Yeah. There was definitely a shift in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were going from the studio system, the big movie stars, to more of a filmmaker-driven cinema.
It's really weird.
Story-driven.
It's really weird because I don't think people realize that back in the day, Hollywood was contracts. It was all about contracts.
Yeah.
Like, you were an actor, you were hired by a studio, and you did 5 films a year for them.
Oh, yeah. Or you would be a contract player, and you would do one of the last contract players was actually Harrison Ford. He worked, I think, for Paramount, and he also worked for another one, but they bought a contract. He would be paid weekly whether he worked or not, and they'd be like, you're going to be in this wrestling movie, or go be on,
Essentially being on call to be an actor.
Go be on this TV show, be on this SWAT thing. So go be a bellboy. So he talked about how horrible that was.
Oh, I can imagine.
And that's basically what got him to quit acting before he
before he met
Mr. George Lucas.
George Lucas.
So let's, I know this is your game, but let's take it back a little bit.
Please do.
First of all, we are enjoying a stepdad beverage. We're having a little 7 and 7, which is a very 70s stepdad drink.
It is. It was my dad's favorite drink for a long time.
Oh, God. It was that's why I swear, man, these drinks are why our dads and stepdads are so mad. Because they were just not drinking the good
I think that's a whole... There's a whole other show we could do about the angry dads.
Speaking of stepdads, you couldn't really have a more different beginning for these guys.
Yeah.
Lucas is the prototypical Northern California boy. His dad owned a stationery store, and his mom, was a homebody, and they took him to Disneyland the first week it opened in 1955 when he was just a little boy.
Aww.
And
did he know, 60 years later, 50 years later,
he was, he was into comic books and science fiction and Flash Gordon serials and that kind of stuff. And then we have, on the other end of the spectrum, we got Spielberg, who's in Ohio.
I didn't know he grew up in Ohio.
Growing up in Ohio, or started out there with his Orthodox Jewish parents. And it was very difficult for him as a kid, especially in Ohio, being an Orthodox Jew.
Yeah.
Because, people weren't very accepting or sensitive about differences back then.
No.
So he got bullied a lot. He got beat up a lot.
Oh.
He said he was never ashamed to be Jewish, but it did make him uncomfortable, and he did grow away from what he said. He grew away from the faith.
I mean, that's explain part of the reason why he, had an imaginary alien friend.
Yeah, because he also, Lucas had his parents together, and Spielberg's parents divorced.
Yeah.
And as those of you who listened to the E.T. show, after his parents divorced, he created a imaginary space friend that was his best friend and his dad and his brother, and filled all of the holes that he apparently. He was a big old piece of Swiss cheese and had a lot of holes to fill. But he was a Boy Scout. He loved movies. He loved going to see, again, he was another guy that loved the serials, like his buddy, George. And he started making movies. His first movie he made at 12, it was like a train wreck movie with his Lionel trains.
Nice.
And he made this war movie with his buddies from school that got some attention. And he ended up moving to Phoenix with his folks. And
it's very different than Ohio.
Yeah, and it is. It's a lot hotter.
In many different ways.
And again, he, was going to the movies. And that was an escape for him because, as a kid who was an outcast, and who had divorced parents and was Jewish and, just all these things that were difficult for a child.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
He had his escape, which was the movies. You know, and
That's relatable. I mean, I think a lot of people do that. I mean, I definitely, when I was growing up, I didn't get into movies until I was like early teens. But I was a big reader, and then it wasn't until I discovered that, hey, there's some movies that are actually kind of like novels on the screen.
Yeah.
And they're immediate, and they're so good, and that's what immediately I was just like, okay, like this is what I have to do.
yeah, I just anything that would shut the old man up for 2 hours. I was in. But he said it was Lawrence of Arabia that really kind of clicked it in for him.
Yeah.
And then we got Lucas, who he's growing up loving cars, and he was an underground race car driver.
Weird to me, considering who he is now.
Well, I mean, if you look at American Graffiti, that's basically his youth.
Chewing ice, sorry.
For all the
ASMR. That actually makes sense. Saying that he was a race car driver, American Graffiti makes way more sense.
Well, he was he wanted to be a professional race car driver.
Oh, really?
He was doing underground races. He started, but what happened was, right before he graduated from high school, he was in this ridiculous car wreck. He was driving this souped up Auto Bianchina, which I don't know. I don't know cars, but it was a car apparently. And another car he was racing, and another car broadsided him, and he flipped his car over and over and over and over again. It crashed into a tree.
Jeez.
Lucas's seatbelt snapped, thrown him from the car, which saved his life, because if his seatbelt was still there, he would have been smashed.
He got thrown from the car while it was rolling.
Right, it snapped before it hit the tree. Right, he ended up having bruised lungs and some severe hemorrhaging, bleeding.
I'm surprised he's alive.
So was he. So he was like, you know what? I think I'm done racing cars. So about this time, he's graduated. His dad's like, look, buddy, you gonna come work with me at the stationery store, right? Modesto. And George said, nope, I'm going to go to art school. And he declared that he's going to be a millionaire before 30.
Well.
But he didn't go to study film. He was studying anthropology, sociology, literature, a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
But he also started shooting with an 8mm camera. He started filming a lot of car races with his buddy. And then they started going to this place, Canyon Cinema, where they had a lot of underground avant-garde stuff.
Ooh.
Watching I don't know, some of those like Jordan Belson or Stan Brakhage, those guys.
Yeah.
And then he got into Godard, Truffaut.
Oh yeah.
Fellini, got into the new wave because everybody, we all do. Anybody who studies film, those
yeah.
But what really got him was the visual telling of, he was a visual filmmaker. He didn't care too much about story. The early stuff that he made, he called them, they were like these visual poems that would evoke feelings. And I saw a couple of them. There was this really brilliant one because he would use strobe effects. He would use all sorts of different sounds, cutting techniques. Everything was to create a feeling rather than a story, right? And he did. He had this one kind of, it was about the war or something, and it was just relentless. And it kind of, a lot of, if you've seen THX 1138, there's kind of this oppressive theme throughout it. Right. And I think a lot of what he learned doing that is kind of the background stuff for that. So he's at this time, he's going to junior college. His buddy is like, his friend that he was going to the movies with was like, hey, buddy, you should go to USC. And so he's like,
do this professionally. Yeah.
I'm gonna go to film
learn
school.
how to do this. Yeah.
So at the same time, we got Spielberg over in in Phoenix, and he wants to go to school, but his grades aren't that great. So he couldn't get into any of the major film schools, so he ended up going to the California State University of Long Beach.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And it was around that time, it was like 1967, I think.
Okay.
That he went to a screening of the USC short films and saw THX 1138 and was blown away. He said, I got to meet this guy, Lucas, because he said, I've made 18 short films and this is better than all of them put together. He was so jealous. It's funny. They say jealousy, but I think it's more
admiration.
Yeah, it's mutual admiration, but it's also, you know how it is with a buddy, and you both writing plays or something, and you're happy that your friend's play is doing really well.
Right.
And then your play or whatever, or your short film.
Yeah.
But, there's still that rivalry. I think it's more of a rivalry than jealousy.
Yeah. You're pushing each other.
But that's where it started. Yeah. I mean, it started then.
That's crazy.
And so Spielberg's like, I got up my game, tried to get into film school, but couldn't because of his grades.
Right.
So he went back to Long Beach. He was a frat boy.
He
was at the theater fraternity. But so Lucas ends up going back to USC. Lucas tried to join the Army.
Oh, wow.
He wanted to be an officer, but because of all the speeding tickets that he had from being a street racer, he was disqualified.
That's crazy.
Then because he had diabetes as a very young man, I don't know. I guess people had it back then.
It's genetic. I mean, it is possible to have it.
He was turned down for the Army. So he went back to USC, went to graduate school to become a filmmaker. He never considered himself a director at that time.
Right.
He was a filmmaker.
Well, right, of course.
Because, honestly, that's what he was doing. He was making these experiences more than these films.
Yeah.
So then you got Spielberg, who's sneaking onto the lot over at Universal.
Right.
He ends up getting his first... a lot of that stuff isn't really true, by the way.
No, it's a myth. It is totally a myth.
Sneaking on and getting his own office.
He just set up his own office and a secretary and stuff,
awesome story. And it ruined so many young film students that burst in and tried to do the same thing and were promptly arrested. I was arrested 6 times.
Six times?
6 different studios, 6 different offices.
Wow.
6 different incidents.
That's too bad. Well, that's 6 stupid people, Jim.
That's why they wouldn't take me in the Army, because of my speeding tickets and my
kept busting into studios.
Felonies.
Aren't you that studio crasher guy?
But what did happen was he was given an opportunity to shoot a 24-minute short for theatrical release.
Okay.
Called Amblin.
Oh, yeah.
Which, coincidentally enough, is, what he named. That's
why.
If ever you're wondering why it was named Amblin, it's because it was his first film, and it did well enough that he was brought into the studio system.
Yeah.
He was brought in as a director. And so he cut his teeth on Columbo and...
Night Gallery.
Night Gallery was his first
thing, yeah.
With Joan Crawford.
And that first episode of Columbo, and I know eventually we're going to do a Columbo episode, it is so good.
Well,
so good.
Yeah. No, but the night, going back to Night Gallery.
Yeah, Night Gallery.
Crawford was kind of horrified at this first-time director, and he was trying to do all these crazy shots to impress everybody, and they're like, dude, it's a TV show. You got to get this done.
Yeah, we have a limited amount of time.
And he kind of got a little bit sidelined for a little while because of that.
Really?
But then Joan Crawford sent a note that was like, this guy's a genius. You got to give him a shot.
Yeah, you need it,
Yeah, so he went on to do Columbo, and he went on to do other TV shows. And then
Marcus Welby.
Marcus
Welby,
a
bunch of stuff. Yeah.
All the staples.
He was their go-to TV director.
Right. So while Lucas is cutting his teeth on all this experimental stuff, hanging out with John Milius and these guys, the Dirty Dozen, Hal Ashby, all these guys that were at film school with him as contemporaries, he's living the... Coppola, the indie life.
He's
working with these guys
outside the system.
Exactly. He's helping create this 70s movement.
Right.
Or at least he's in the midst of it, while Spielberg is back in the studio system. He's learning the ropes. He's learning how to shoot stuff quickly. Right. And, get
the
stuff
things
done.
They wish they would teach you at film school. Like he was actually in there learning it.
Right. And so he did, his first TV movie was Duel.
Yeah. Based off a Richard Matheson novel.
Matheson, if you don't know, he also did
I Am Legend and The Incredible Shrinking Woman and Incredible Shrinking Man, the 50-foot tall woman. He did literally...
He's a science fiction
god. He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing.
But it was Dennis Weaver, played a salesman who was being just tortured and chased by this trucker. His tank truck. It was a tanker?
a truck. It was a big truck. No, it was not. I don't think.
I mean, it was an 18-wheeler.
It was a Mack truck. Yeah, it was a big truck.
And you never saw the windows were all blacked out.
Shaded,
You never saw the guy. It was like, so I mean, it was basically his first Jaws.
Yeah,
Was this movie? You know,
I remember watching that for the first time and being like, and this was 10 years ago, and I was like, this was a TV movie?
Yeah,
it blew my mind that they put this on TV in the early 70s.
Oh yeah, but I mean, we didn't have everything we have now. You know,
right?
You had,
of course,
you had a few movies. You had movies coming out, and you had TV.
Yeah,
and that was it. You didn't really have home video.
Yeah.
You didn't have video games. You didn't have. You had your books. You had your records.
You had the
had
radio,
your TV, and if you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah.
But so they would do more. It was like bigger budgets and bigger.
Yeah, they would spend more on TV stuff.
Because you're getting 30, 40, 50, 60 million
That's
people.
True. That's true.
Watching because they got nothing better to do.
The numbers were much higher back in the day when you only had 3 networks to watch.
Right.
And you pull in 60 million and people get mad, and it's like, no, now you pull in 3 and they're like, hey, good job.
So all during this, these guys are still friends, Spielberg and Lucas, and they're still friends. They still have their rivalry, and so. While Spielberg's working in the system, Coppola comes up to Lucas and is like, hey, will you help me start Zoetrope Studios?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the American version of the European New Wave, this place where people could create and make film. I mean, it sounded amazing. And here's the thing. Everybody wants to have a film oasis. And look, I tried. We all wanted like it's a place where everybody can just create and make movies.
It's just a bastion of creativity.
But you run out of money, and you realize that all these people have really big personalities, and a lot of different problems that
people try to kill each other.
But I mean, look, they tried. It did well for a while, and it was an amazing experiment, and. A lot of really great films came out of it. I don't mean to poo-poo Zoetrope.
No. It had its time, and it was important for the movement.
Well, definitely.
Happening.
Coppola really dug THX 1138. The original film had a little bit more of a complicated title.
It was Electronic Labyrinth THX 1138 4EB. Which sounds like a serial number.
It is so George Lucas.
I'm being crazy.
He's so funny. Yeah, I'm just gonna make it a little more complicated. I think people are going to have to think about it.
We have to include the 4EB.
Yes, I think it's very important to the story. But Coppola loved it and said, let's make it into a feature. And the critics liked it. It was a bomb, a huge bomb. Because it was so complicated. It's a great movie. It is, but Robert Duvall's in it. It's a very, it's one of the first kind of dystopian future. Kind of fascist, futuristic, escape from the. It's just there's a lot of going on. It's very ambitious film.
It was it was fantastic, but it was definitely kind of the definition of before its time.
Challenging.
A lot of people just weren't ready for that kind of movie.
Yeah.
But it definitely helped because there were a ton of sci-fi dystopia thrillers that came out after that. Once they realized how much they could cash in on that.
But it was also a way for him to kind of get out his visual style. What I think is so funny is these two guys are kind of two different sides of filmmaking.
Oh, yeah.
They're both very... I'm not saying Spielberg's not extremely proficient visually or, the guy...
He's very good at what he does. Yeah.
The guy... Basically, his DPs are figureheads. He does the work himself. Yeah. And same with Lucas. But I think Lucas was more, at that time... He was more concerned with how films are made. Mm-hmm. The look, the feel, evoking emotion without words, without story, getting something across, creating a feeling, creating a world, right?
Yeah.
And Spielberg, being in TV, was about telling a story.
Yeah.
He had to have a beginning, middle, and end, act 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, that was so ingrained in him. Yeah.
Right, so he's learning. So I think they're learning from each other. They're different strengths.
Yeah, I agree. That's the best kind of friends to have.
Yeah, and I think they realized their strengths because they were both very complimentary and extremely supportive of each other's work. So when American Graffiti comes out in 73. It is still to this day the most, or at least one of the most successful independent films ever. It's made for $738,000.
Wow. Wow.
And it grossed 10, 20, I don't know the exact gross, but
it grossed $140 million.
It grossed $140 million.
Off of a less than $1 million
yes.
budget.
Yeah. And so here's the wonderkind. All of a sudden, Lucas is,
yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want? And so Spielberg is just like, damn, man.
I want that.
Way to go, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm jealous, but okay, awesome. Way to go. So I'm going to work on Jaws. So, so he does Jaws, and Jaws is a mess. Lucas comes in, helps him. Lucas' wife allegedly comes in and helps with the cut. Again, I don't know if that's a completely true story.
They both worked on American Graffiti, so it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So but they were always there with each other, you know. In John Milius and
Oh, I meant the Verna Fields and Marcia Lucas, the two editors.
Yeah.
Verna got credit for Jaws, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if Marcia was there helping.
No, she's a genius. And so he works on Jaws. Jaws comes out. Huge success, bigger than Graffiti, you know, a million times bigger than Graffiti.
Yeah.
The very first blockbuster. So Lucas is like, wow, you know, that's amazing. You did this. I'm really jealous. So
what can I do?
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to make Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing is as he's making Star Wars, Spielberg's making Close Encounters.
I'm going to make an alien movie too.
Yeah, and they visit each other on set, and Lucas is just insecure all get out about Star Wars. He's just like, Star Wars is going to flop. It's a bomb. And Spielberg's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's going to be a huge hit. So Lucas says, okay, fine. I'll give you 2.5% of Star Wars if you give me 2.5% of Close Encounters, and we'll see who is the winner. They're both winners.
We'll see who's right.
But because of that bet, Spielberg got $40 million.
Yeah.
He's $40 million.
He's made a ton of money off of this just for essentially being friends with George Lucas.
Yeah. So boom, then they create the blockbusters. You know? So
then
everything changes. But let's go back. That's the story of those two guys. And how they became friends. And
it is weird that they both ended up kind of becoming the blockbuster guys, considering they're from such
reluctantly
disparate backgrounds. And neither of them wanted to do that. They just, especially Lucas.
Well, I know that Lucas wanted success. I know that Lucas wanted to be rich, and I know that Lucas wanted autonomy.
Right. But that's just it. Lucas wanted it, but he wanted it on his terms.
Exactly. And I think because of his early success with American Graffiti, he was given that. So, without the success of American Graffiti, he would have had to work himself up more, like Spielberg kind of did through the system.
Right.
Where Lucas just came out independent, made this independent film that was gangbusters. That launched the careers of Ron Howard and Harrison Ford and Mackenzie and all these people. Richard Dreyfuss. The list goes on and on and on and on.
A lot of people in the movie.
Yeah. Yes, it's a big movie. It's a fun movie. It's a great movie. And it's a love letter to his childhood and to his racing days. And the movie is so successful because it is such a personal film, I think. He did such a good job of recreating his life. And we're also at 73, we're about at the end of the Vietnam War. We're done with Watergate.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
We're at least done with
It already happened, and it's in the process of being wrapped up. Yeah,
right. But I think everybody was just looking for nostalgia or just a breath or something to take them back to a simpler time. Because this, Graffiti takes place, I think, in the early '60s, late '50s. And, it was around the time when he was a kid, 62, 63, and. So it was only
62.
Yeah, so 62. So it's like basically if we made a movie today that took place in 2011.
Yeah,
So it's not that big of a.
It's not that far. But it was before JFK being assassinated. It was before the Vietnam War. It was before Watergate. It was before all that stuff.
It was right when Vietnam was starting. One of the guys,
in the movie,
the character
Charlie Martin Smith.
Yes. Okay. Charlie Martin Smith an amazing actor, little glasses guy. His story is so great. He wanted to meet this beautiful blonde,
Yeah.
but he was going to Vietnam the next day. So it was just about hanging out. There was really
Right.
not that much of a story. It was just a bunch of
Kids being
kids being
and-
kids on a Saturday night cruising, and right after, I think it was after graduation or something.
It was definitely
Times were changing, yeah.
calling back to that more innocent time.
Yeah, but at the cusp,
Right,
it was like the
right.
last. The beauty of it was at
Yeah.
the last possible second
Right,
of that
right,
innocence
right.
before it was going to be
Right. It was
crushed with
on
JFK,
yeah.
with Vietnam, with Watergate. It was that last, almost like the last summer of America.
Yeah. You can feel the imminent change coming.
Right,
in the movie.
but it doesn't hamper the joy of the movie either,
No,
which
no,
is
not at all.
brilliant. I mean,
Not at
that's
all.
why it's so brilliant. I wonder if, because Lucas and we've talked about this before, he really wanted to do Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what would have become of him. Because Flash Gordon, he would have made a movie. It probably would have been great.
It would have been good, but it would not have been Star Wars.
But there's the world building of Star Wars.
yeah.
That's the thing about these two guys. It's not easy making movies, man. People don't realize.
No.
You folks don't realize.
if everyone that watched a movie really came into it going, wow, it is a miracle that this is happening right now, that I'm able to sit down and watch this. Every single time a movie happens, it is a friggin' miracle, because
Years.
there's so many moving parts.
Yeah.
There's so many ways it can go wrong. And it does. I mean, 99% of movies that are being made don't get made, and that's it.
Right.
And it's just how it is.
But these guys, not just Lucas and Spielberg, but their contemporaries, they were trying to do something different. There was the films that came out then around the time, like The Conversation, Coppola,
Yeah. Zoetrope. Yeah.
Zoetrope, Gene Hackman. But just one of the greatest films about paranoia that you'll ever see.
Oh, so fantastic.
Small film, but just like the little moments of the other guys ribbing. They're all getting drunk, and they're all a bunch of jerks, and they're at his place, and he's so tight because he doesn't like anybody near his stuff. He's so paranoid about everything. And
Gene
they're
Hackman's so
making fun of him, and he's just wound. And it gets, he earns that freak out at the end where he's just ripping everything apart because he thinks he's being spied on.
It's such
See that movie.
fantastic
See that
movie. It has such a great, unsatisfying ending.
Oh my God, yeah.
But in such a brilliant way.
But that's the stories these guys
Yeah,
were telling.
yeah.
They were telling complicated stories. Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah,
One Flew
yeah.
Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah. Life doesn't always get tied up in that pretty ribbon, and
No.
that pretty bow. And it's like, this was the first time where the directors and the writers were finally like, okay, let's do this.
And the actors. And
And
the
the
actors
actors,
were
yeah.
game. I mean,
And it
you
was like,
gotta
let's
give
do this for real. Yeah.
Al Pacino, but Al Pacino, maybe you see him today and he's ooh-ah, babadee, babadoo.
Yeah.
But that man took so many risks in his career. Dog Day Afternoon, playing a guy who, it's based on a true story, who's holding a bank hostage to get sex reassignment surgery for his trans lover.
Right.
This is like
1975.
1975. And then he does Cruising, where he plays this cop that goes undercover in a gay
Oh, yeah.
leather bar scene with graphic sex and stuff. And everybody's telling him, your career's over, pal.
Yeah, why
you
are
can't
you
do
doing
this? Why are you
this?
doing
Yeah.
this? And he said, I'm doing this because this is what I want to do. This is challenging. He didn't want to be Gary Cooper. These guys, John Cazale.
Yeah. John Cazale.
John Cazale. Fredo from The Godfather, married to Meryl Streep.
That's right. He was married to Meryl Streep, wasn't he?
Deer Hunter. That man was one of the greatest American actors ever. One of the greatest character actors. Such a short but impressive career.
Yeah.
Died young.
He was every movie he was in, or every major studio release he was in, was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah. So, biggest crime in film history, apparently. John Cazale never got an Oscar nomination.
He never got nominated for that. He did get nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor
Oh,
for Dog
neat.
Day Afternoon, and he didn't win.
Good Lord. I mean,
Yeah.
well, it was also because the voting academy back then were all these guys from, Bob Hope and, the road movies with Hope and Crosby and, all these old school Hollywood guys that are watching these movies going,
Yeah.
what's this hippie crap?
Well, you understand too that, like, according to Bruce Fretz, who I don't know who that is, but he said about him, he's the walking embodiment of the aphorism, acting is reacting, providing the perfect counterbalance to his recurring co-stars. Essentially, people he acted against got nominated for awards.
Yes, because he was an unselfish.
Yeah,
He was the perfect actor to work against because he's giving you everything.
yeah, yeah.
And I think Meryl Streep is such a great actor because of her association with him as well. I mean, can you imagine Deer Hunter? Let's look at that for a second.
Oh yeah,
Let's look at that cast.
Yeah.
You had De Niro. You had Meryl Streep.
yeah.
You had Cazale. You had a young, beautiful Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken, yeah.
You had.
I disagree with the beautiful part, but that's me.
He was a beautiful young man and a child actor too.
I agree, but I
Beautiful
think by the time he got to Deer Hunter, he was not a beautiful man anymore.
Still pretty,
but
pretty man.
But that's me. It might also have been the fact that he's just a really good actor.
George Zunza. I mean, everybody in that film is impeccable, but all of them, none of them look like Hollywood stars.
No.
De
Totally
Niro's a
not.
tiny man. You know, he's a little weird looking. You know, like you said, Christopher Walken's a monster. Even Meryl Streep, she's beautiful woman, but she's not classically Hollywood beautiful.
No, she's not. Yeah. What was generally accepted
As a
being
movie
a
star.
standard for a movie actor and actors that
It changed from your looks to your talent. So
Yeah,
in the 70s, it was your talent that counted.
right.
Somebody like Alan Alda.
Thank you.
Hey, Alan Alda here. Somebody like Alan Alda, who's, you know, he's just
He's goofy looking.
looking guy, and he's just like, oh, everybody, man. But they loved him because he was a sensitive, smart guy, cared about stuff. MASH, you know, you're getting 60, 70 million people watching this show, which is basically an anti-Vietnam show that's couched in
the Korean War.
the Korean War, and it lasted like 5 times as long as the Korean War.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
But back to that wonderful time in the 70s. And how it was ruined by our two intrepid heroes, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
How they eventually destroyed the 70s.
So I think the reason why it was these two guys, rather than Coppola or De Palma or Milius or any of these other really great filmmakers of the time, is because what Spielberg and Lucas did that the other guys didn't do is they took what they learned from working independently, what they learned from making these small stories, and as we keep saying, plug them into their big stories.
Yeah.
What they learned how to do was tell huge stories, but in a small scale. Like,
Right, in a more personal way.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, this alien is stuck on Earth with this kid, but it's just a story of friendship.
Right. And loneliness of this kid that just wants a friend.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
needs a friend. His parents are divorced. He's getting
His
bullied by
brother
his...
won't let him play D&D.
Won't let him play D&D. Jeez. Zero charisma.
Is it possible... This is a total aside. I'm going to speed bump this.
Please. I'd love it.
Is it possible that it was all in Elliot's head?
Sure. Well, no, because everybody was involved.
I immediately started saying that, and I started thinking about the astronaut NASA suit, and I was like, nope.
It was all in the snow globe of an autistic boy. Which is a reference to St. Elsewhere for all those people that have no idea what I'm talking about.
Spoiler.
Watching the films from the 70s, like what we talked about, The Conversation and The Godfather, Carrie,
Dog Day Afternoon. and-
Dog Day Afternoon, Easy Rider.
There you go. Yeah.
Seeing like Easy Rider, seeing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, being exposed to all these films that were great stories by great filmmakers that were telling things in a different way, that weren't just, and no offense to like When Harry Met Sally or any of these movies that are just kind of, what they are.
That's part of the new Hollywood.
80s was pretty much the worst.
There became
as
a
much
new...
as I love 80s cinema, objectively, it was pretty much the worst.
I mean, technically, you
film.
can thank Lucas and Spielberg for When Harry Met Sally, because if it wasn't for them creating these big movies, that movie wouldn't exist.
Well, yeah. I think the reason why I love the 70s cinema so much is just because that... And there's one guy I do want to talk about before we finish this all up, and that is John Cassavetes.
Okay.
John Cassavetes was kind of the model for what I wanted to do. John Cassavetes had this really great system of doing things. It was the one for them, one for him. So what he would do is he would take any Hollywood job there is on anything. So you see him in a lot of disaster movies.
A lot of stuff that you're like, why are you doing this?
And he did it all so he could fund his own movies,
Right.
That he made with his wife Jenna Rollins, who's an amazing actress, his best friend Columbo, Peter Falk, who was in a lot of his movies. Also, we had Seymour Cassel, who was one of the greatest character actors ever. Minnie and Moskowitz.
Oh yeah,
Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. Those are Cassavetes films that he was in.
Yeah.
If you have a chance to see Cassavetes films, see them. He was also, the guy worked until he died. He was in Rushmore, with Bill Murray and Jason Schwartzman.
Right.
And, just a really great actor. Another guy that, came from the 70s that
Right.
just showed you what acting was all about. And it's just a pure independent filmmaker is a rare thing. There's no patronage anymore. There's no...
No. It kind of died out in the 70s.
It died, yeah. And there was a resurgence in the early 90s, and then it died out again because there's always something ready to kill it. Because,
Right.
They love making a ton of money off of a movie that only made $700,000. But that's lightning in a bottle, right?
Right. John Cassavetes is fascinating. I don't know him as well as I should.
His movies are tough.
But it's not. It reminds me a lot of like Crispin Glover does the same thing. Like and to the point of Crispin Glover's movies are not Hollywood friendly in the slightest.
But I bet you one of his main influences is Cassavetes.
Oh yeah.
He's one of the premier American cinema verite directors.
Right.
You're watching something that you shouldn't be watching.
Yeah.
Woman on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, Jenna Rollins, her performance in that is captivating, horrifying, and heartbreaking all at once.
Yeah.
And the build on that movie, and it's another one of those things where you just feel like I am in a room that I shouldn't be in, and I just want to leave. I just want to leave. And I think that's the thing. That's what was the 70s, and that's what these independent filmmakers did.
Right.
Is they evoked feeling and emotion, and they told these stories that were very personal and very real. And I think what we're trying to say kind of is that in a long-winded, rambly 7 and 7 kind of way,
yeah.
is that Spielberg and Lucas took these tools and made these blockbuster movies. And it's not their fault that everything changed.
No.
It's just there were inferior filmmakers that came after them that made these empty, hollow films.
Well, and it's not. I don't even know if I would blame necessarily the inferior filmmakers. I would say that it was Hollywood finding a way to take the two things, those things that Spielberg and Lucas created, and being able to profit off of it.
Exploit it, yeah.
And exploit it. That's the big thing. Exploit it. And the thing is that they're going to keep that going.
Yeah.
Regardless, because to them it's like, no, you created this thing. It's great. We can get Joe Blow over here who can do it too. And guess what? He really can't.
Yeah.
But, we're going to try, and we'll make some money, and it's not going to matter if everybody thinks we're stupid.
Yeah. And they also kind of created the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there was the Nick and Nora movies. There were movies that were franchises, but
those
they weren't going to convention. They weren't Star Wars.
No.
It was mostly based on books. Yeah, there was Sherlock Holmes.
It was people back in the day going back and like walking past the theater and going, "Oh, the new Nick and Nora movie is coming out." I didn't know, and then they go see it and they'd be done with it, and that'd be it. It wasn't what it is now, where it's like I have to go see this. I have to go stand in line
24-hour.
Yeah.
I remember the '90s were just the madness apex of these 24-hour Thursday night beginning screenings.
Yeah.
I saw Jurassic Park at like 1 a.m. and I saw Independence Day at 2 a.m. and it was really fun. And look, I think there's room for all kinds of movies. I love big, crazy, splashy special effects movies. I love tiny little independent stories. Sure. I just think the problem is, it's always been kind of, they squeeze out these little movies to make the big movies, and it makes sense more people see the big movies, but we gotta still have room for these little guys. And thankfully, I think with a lot of the streaming services and everything that we have going on, the theatrical experience for these films, that's the shame. We're losing these little independent theaters that show,
Yeah.
these films that slip under the radar.
Yeah, and and obviously the last year has not been helpful whatsoever
No.
towards that. But no, it's true. I mean, the majority of the movies that are coming out now that get any kind of airplay, any kind of recognition, are these giant blockbuster movies.
But we're also seeing the same kind of thing where they're poaching these indie directors.
Oh yeah, yeah.
To make these big movies, which are making better big movies. And these are the guys that grew up studying Spielberg and Lucas.
Right.
Their early stuff to their big stuff. And that's the thing. I think anybody who dismisses them as, these guys that ruined cinema and these blockbuster fools or whatever they say, they get a lot of shit because they're very successful and everybody says they ruin movies. But look at it this way. The sound that you have is because of George Lucas. Many of the camera movements that you have is because of George Lucas.
Mm-hmm. A byproduct of the George Lucas and Steven Spielberg making all these blockbusters is that there's these now theaters that have 20 screens and they have to put movies in there.
George Lucas genuinely, seriously, passionately wanted to make the movie going experience better.
Yeah.
And he has with THX and all of the things that he's done. It's almost as if Spielberg had kind of went back to he was like, I think I missed that independent time.
Right.
I think I missed that coming up part with George and all these guys. And I didn't get to make those movies. I mean, Sugarland Express, which was based on, I think Goldie Hawn was in it. It was based on this couple that were trying to get their kids back. So it was, it was based on, but that was kind of it for him in terms of those kind of movies. And so I think he kind of was like, well, maybe something to prove, maybe I need an Oscar or whatever. But whatever the reason, it wasn't like he just made these prestige films. He made really good movies. And it just goes to show you what a great filmmaker he is that we got Schindler's List.
Yeah.
And then we got Munich. And that, you can't dismiss him because he can go both ways. This guy is an amazing storyteller.
His movies are still very personal to him. I mean, he did Saving Private Ryan because he grew up with these guys who were veterans of this war, and it affected him, and he needed to tell their story. I don't know how I'd react then. I can't say that I wouldn't freak out and poop my pants and then be done.
Of course you would. Of course. But it's just like...
Thanks.
All of us would.
It
Great
was personal.
Movie, personal about his...
Munich was personal. It was... And personal meaning it doesn't have to initially be
Schindler's
something
List
that happened to him.
But it's personal to his history, and it's personal to his family.
That's what I mean.
His dad had... I think 12 or 16 members of his family die in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
The Holocaust was an ever-present part of his childhood. That was, part of the thing that made him so uncomfortable. But it was, I get it. As a kid, you don't want to hear about this stuff all the time. You want to go ride bikes and play with your friends. But as you get older, you realize, wow, the history of my family and the suffering and this, I gotta do something.
That's getting older and finding I have to come to grips with these things.
He did the Holocaust Project where and they were basically getting as many people who were still survivors of the Holocaust on film to tell their story, to keep the story alive.
Right.
And it was it is an amazing project. I think these guys are going to hopefully keep telling stories. I think Lucas is kind of retired, I suppose.
He's kind of done. I mean, I'm sure he'll probably end up producing or throwing out story ideas.
I'm sure he's having regrets after
isn't he technically working on the 5th Indiana Jones movie?
Yes.
I mean, so he is technically working.
Yes. Yes. But Spielberg's not directing it. It's mangled. I'm sure it'll be good, but it's these guys are slowing down. Of course, they're 70s.
Yeah. They're getting up there.
They
not
gave
Clint
us
Eastwood.
Oh God, and that guy, man. Even he is like,
can't do my one movie here anymore.
I'm not aging gracefully.
I'm gonna take this year off.
Yeah, but it's these guys are still telling stories. They have still great stories to tell. But even if they didn't tell another story, what they've done is incredible, and you cannot deny the genius of these two guys. And it's lightning in a bottle, both of them. And the fact that they came up together and were really good friends.
The fact that they knew each other and they were friends just blows my mind.
In the 60s. This is
before anything. That's just crazy to me.
And then the two of them helped each other create some of the most fun you could ever have in a movie.
Yeah.
Ever.
My absolute favorite of both of their oeuvres is Raiders of the Lost
Howard the
Ark.
Duck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck.
It's my fave.
Nothing like Duck Sex.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
George Lucas made a movie about bestiality.
well, technically it's not. It's really,
I know.
I mean, isn't he technically an alien?
Yeah, I guess. Right? Interdimensional? I
from
don't know.
space or
Howard
something.
Duck. Yeah, Howard the Duck is an interesting cat. I guess he's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. He's
But look, he made a choice. The thing is, I think Howard the Duck, a lot of, there's Radio Days was another, not Radio Days, but Radio Days wasn't that, that was Woody Allen.
Oh yeah.
But it was Radio something with Brian Benben from Dream On HBO.
Oh yeah. Brian Benben.
And it was this like 1930s or 40s radio drama thing. And he only made that movie to try out the digital sets that he was going to use for the next Star Wars prequel trilogy.
Nice.
So he would produce movies to try out technology for the things that he wanted to do.
Wow, that's smart, man.
He just wanted to make movies as incredible as possible.
He wanted to make movies that he saw in his mind. He wanted those things to be, and that's the beauty
Both of these guys.
Lucas. Yeah, both of them. But
Epic imaginations.
Yeah.
Epic imaginations.
Lucas was just more technical, and obviously still a great storyteller. But like
But he was more concerned with lights and color
Yeah.
and telling story without words. Hence his really
his poems,
his scripts.
well,
dialogue.
Yeah.
Wouldn't. But his
Great
visuals were
He just
amazing.
needs somebody to punch up his scripts. That's
Yeah. Or at least actors that can
not terrible.
that have the charisma to overcome.
What are you
the
talking
wooden
about?
dialogue.
I love Ewan McGregor. How dare you?
Ewan McGregor is great. They're all. I mean, look, man, I like all those movies. I can't think of a Spielberg movie I don't really like. I can't think of a Lucas
not
movie
at
I don't really like. Even the ones that aren't great have something in them that are interesting.
Even the Spielberg movies that aren't really Spielberg movies, like Bridge of Spies, which he just jumped into because the director couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's still a fantastic movie.
Sure.
It's done so well and would not have been as good if he wasn't directing it.
No, because these guys don't just rely on the effects or the script. They put it all together, and they know what they're doing. They know how to work with good people. They know how to get things done on time, under budget.
Well, they learn the hard way sometimes, but
Well, sure, but they
have
learned,
to.
you know. I
Yeah,
mean, these guys,
yeah.
there's a reason why they are who they are. There's a reason why they have so much success, and there's a reason why we're talking about them right now,
That is true.
50-something years later.
Except now our time is up.
Yes. Well, my drink's done, and I'm getting a little ornery. So
We
I'm
gotta go.
stepdadding.
We're gonna go duke it out about Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. We're going to go.
Blow some smoke in each other's faces.
Then we're going to have some cheese fondue.
Ooh, yeah.
And 16 Camel Street cigarettes.
Ugh.
Yeah.
God. I can taste
Drive
it.
around.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Yes.
We'll be back next week with Jaws. It's
Yeah,
good
we said
episode,
it was
so
going to
yeah.
be this week, but
No, it's okay.
but we tricked you.
Nah, just kidding.
We just wanted to close out the Spielberg month with my favorite of his movies,
Yeah.
which is Jaws. She beat him mercilessly
Mercilessly?
with a wire hanger.
You've only had like 2 sips, Jim.
I know, I'm lightweight. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming, Charlie's Angels, already in progress.